Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the channel for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open. The floor, as they would say, is yours. What are the things you guys want to talk about? That is what we are here to discuss today. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. Good to have you guys here. And I'm going to let you know there are two different ways you can get a question or a topic on Open Mic. One is if you're watching the show any of the 23 hours of the day that we're not streaming live, so anytime, you can use our tip link at streamelements.com/John Campea/tip. You can also find that link in the description below. And you can send in a question that way and we'll address it on the next episode. Or if you happen to be watching live right now, and hello to everybody who is joining me live at the moment, you can go ahead and use the super chat feature and fire it on in that way. And as long as your questions are appropriate to be used on the show, we'll address it here on the show. All right. Hey guys, before we get into your questions here, I thought I'd take a moment and I want to talk a little bit about Godzilla. You know, Godzilla right now is basically kind of ruling the world. I mean, you've got Godzilla -1, which is terrific. Is out there. You got Monarch, which is ridiculously good, like way better than I thought it was going to be. And you've got Godzilla X Kong, which is Kong just dropped the trailer and stuff like that. And despite some things in it that made me raise my eyebrows, I got to admit, I'm dying to see it. I thought the last one was a lot of fun. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I think they got a great Titan to be the big foil this time around with, what do they call him? Scar King? I think Scar King or whatever the name of the big beastie is that apparently supposedly killed all of King Kong's relatives and ancestors, what have you. It looks all great. So what is it about Godzilla right now at this time, at this place, that has everybody so excited and everybody kind of talking about it? And I kind of touched on it a little bit in the show this morning, but I thought I'd go into it a little bit more here. First of all, let's look at this. Godzilla -1, this little Japanese film made for like, I think Ray told me it was made for $15 million, $15 million. And a lot of times, you know, a lot of these foreign films will come over and get a North American run, but they really don't do much. This movie made $11 million in North America. A $15 million movie came over, made $11 million in its opening weekend here, which again, for MCU standards, that's nothing, but for a small international film getting a North American release, that's way more than they normally get, like infinitely more than they normally get. And for it to pull in that kind of numbers is pretty impressive for a film that once again cost $15 million to make. And it's a very, very good movie. I enjoy it. I think it's my favorite Godzilla movie I've ever seen is Godzilla -1. But with that, the excellence of Monarch, which Monarch, there was some discussion going on in the live chat. Monarch, of course, is not a Godzilla show. It's a show. Monarch is the name of the human organization. It's supposed to be a show about the humans that live in this world of monsters. And I thought it's been amazing. This is an amazing show that I think the characters have been fantastic. The stories, the intrigue going on. I still want to know what's going on with his dad with two families. Anyway, all that. And even if you take the monsters out of the show, it's just a great show. And that's the sign of a truly great show. You got Godzilla X Kong. Here's to me the beauty of it and why for me Godzilla is exciting right now. And I say this as somebody who's not been the biggest. I mean, I like Godzilla like everybody does, but I'm not like a big, huge Godzilla fanatic. And so as somebody who's not a big Godzilla fanatic, I think one of the reasons why Godzilla is just so dominating the pop cultural landscape right now is because we have these three different projects, right? You got Godzilla -1, you got Monarch, and you got Godzilla and Kong. And I think the thing that really, the magic sauce, if you will, is that all three of them are so very different. They're so very different. Obviously, the Toho Godzilla in -1 is different from the Godzilla Kong legendary Godzilla that we have, which is, I mean, technically speaking, the same Godzilla in Monarch, but Monarch is such a different kind of show. It's such a different kind of story. It's such a different kind of approach. And I love the fact that right now we've got 3 Godzilla things, Godzilla connected things, I should say. And all of them are so good, but they're so wildly different from each other. And I think that is kind of capturing something right now in the zeitgeist, that there's something in Kong for almost everybody. You like the big giant monster movies? Well, great. You got Kong, Godzilla, you got -1. You like real, like traditional television drama with great stories and great characters? Great. You got Monarch. You like the traditional Godzilla? Great. You got -1. You like the more modern wild Godzilla? Great. You got Godzilla versus Kong. I mean, there's something in every iteration of Godzilla right now for somebody, for everybody. There's something in there. And I think that really works. Now, and by the way, I think all 3 of them have their weaknesses as well. Like, as great as Godzilla -1 is, and you guys have heard me review it. I loved it. I love Godzilla versus Kong. Don't misinterpret what I'm about to say as if I don't like it. I love the film. But one could say it is yet just another Godzilla movie. It's the same thing. Oh no, it's Godzilla. Boom, boom, boom. Destroy city, destroy city, destroy city. Turn around, boom, boom, walk back into the water. I mean, there's that. You got your legendary Godzilla, which is kind of like a comic book movie version of Godzilla and King Kong. That's a little bit of a drawback. You got Monarch, which I think is amazing. But if you got your audiences that are just looking for, like if you got your audiences that are looking for the traditional Godzilla thing, where it's just Godzilla walks out of the water, destroys the city, and then walks back into the water, Monarch's not going to satisfy you, right? So there are strengths to its diversity, also weaknesses in each one. I acknowledge that. But I really think that's part of the reason why Godzilla is kind of ruling the world right now, is the fact that we've got very, very different types of Godzilla stories and different iterations of Godzilla all happening at the same time. And I think that's really working in its favor. So there we go. Yeah, I'm actually getting, I was talking to Rob too. The more I'm thinking about it, the more and more excited I'm getting for Godzilla versus Kong, or Godzilla X Kong. I still don't know what the hell X is supposed to mean, but Godzilla Kong 2, let's call it. I'm finding myself getting really, really excited about that. Even though I don't like sprinting Godzilla that's in the trailer. Not a big fan of the fuchsia color, though I understand the rationale. That's to representative of the radiation he's absorbing from those crystals. I get it, but I'm getting really excited about it. So I'm kind of stoked for it. Anyway, guys, good to have all you here. And it is now time for us to get over for the whole purpose and reason why we're here, which is to take your questions that were here on the show today. And haters gonna hate. I am pro fuchsia Godzilla. Again, it makes sense. I prefer the blue, but at the end of the day, the color makes no difference. So it is what it is. All right, let's get things rolling here and get over to your questions, shall we? As I take one more sip of my soda. I just found out something from Mecha Goji, who's saying the X in the Japanese is versus. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. If that's true, and I don't know if that's true, but if it's true, that kind of makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. In that case, it's kind of cool. But I don't think a lot of North American audiences know that. But okay, that's kind of cool if that's true. All right. Let's get over to your questions here, shall we? We're going to get things started off here with, no, not with that one. We're going to get things started with, there we go. David Bowers, who writes, "Hey, John, did you see Taboo? 2017 BBC series starring Tom Hardy among some other big UK stars. Very much enjoyed it and was surprised to read this week that it's finally been greenlit for a season 2 with Hardy excited to come back. Highly recommend." No, I mean, honestly, Killing Eve is the only BBC show I've seen in years. Well, no, I take that back. The one with Rob Stark, the guy from Eternals, the guy who plays Rob Stark in Game of Thrones. He had that one where he's a British agent. What was the name of that one again? Do you guys remember the name of that one? I saw that. Was it just called Bodyguard? Mega Chris and John Vu are both saying it's called Bodyguard. Yeah, so the only BBC shows I've seen in the last couple of years are Killing Eve and Bodyguard. So no, I've never seen Taboo. I'll be honest with you, I've never even heard of Taboo, but the fact that it's got Tom Hardy attached to it, that's actually kind of exciting to me. So I like that. All right, let's keep going here. Next up, we've got a D&Z who writes, honestly, I don't know much about Sentry, but I don't understand why Marvel hasn't considered bringing him in as the big bad for Avengers Secret Wars over Doom, since you guys have already talked about just how powerful Sentry is if no Kang is used. Well, okay, but that's... The first thing you start with in storytelling is story. Bringing in Sentry makes no sense right now. Like bringing in Sentry, I should say, to be the climax of the big overarching MCU story that always comes to its crescendo in the Avengers movies. We haven't had Sentry, right? What story ties into everything they've been doing in this phase so far that leads us into that? It would be pointless and very random to just say, Sentry's our villain. Okay. How does that make any sense? What does that tie into that we've already done? Because really there's been nothing even remotely hinting so far to be Sentry. It makes much more sense to use him in something like Thunderbolts, where it's a fresh new team movie. You're bringing in a new character. That's a great thing to do. But just to suddenly out of nowhere bringing him, why? Just because he's a powerful character? The Marvel pantheon is filled with really powerful characters. The issue is not just to find a really great, powerful character, but it's to find a character and use a character that will make sense narratively, that has a way of tying in to everything else they've been doing so far. And, yeah, I think that's why I don't think it would make much sense for them to go with a Sentry right now. But I am very excited for the fact that they are bringing this character into the MCU. And by the way, I've mentioned this before. I will say it again. They are going to depower Sentry. Like, I have no doubt about that. The Sentry that we're going to get in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not going to be on the same power level as the Sentry that we get in the comic books. It's just because that level of power is nothing can match it in the MCU, right? So I don't think they're going to do that. And we'll see. By the way, I'm going to just address this quick. Dick Champion, which tells you a lot just by the fact that they're using that username, says race swapping makes no sense. He's blonde Superman. That's his famous. Two things, Dick, that you're completely wrong about. Number one, he's not famous. 99% of the movie-going audience has never heard of Sentry. He's not famous. It's a completely unknown character to most people. Number two, they're not race swapping Sentry because Sentry does not exist yet in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Part number three, if I were to explain and describe the Sentry character to you or to anybody else, you wouldn't have any guess as to what ethnicity they are because the ethnicity of the character has no relevance, right? Unlike a Bruce Wayne, where I think his ethnicity is important because it's a character who grew up enjoying white privilege, and I think that's a key understanding of the character. Unless you're talking about somebody like T'Challa, who, being black as the king of an African nation, Wakanda, and the culture there, that makes sense. But for a Sentry, if you were to explain the key understanding concepts of the character, not once would his ethnicity come into play. Not once. It's not an important part of who the character is. So really, there's no reason they need to change the race, but there's no reason not to either. So there is no valid reason. There's no valid objection to him being white, black, Asian. Doesn't matter because none of it is relevant to who and what the character is. If you know anything about the comics and you know anything about the character, you know that his ethnicity plays zero importance to who the character is. Some characters, it is important, but many times there are characters like Sentry that it's not important. And so it's completely irrelevant. All right. Next up, we've got Where are we? Paul Atreides Solos writes, hey, John, what mic setup do you use on Open Mic? Well, I use a different microphone on Open Mic here inside my office than I do out there on the stage. Out there on the stage, we use Rode Procaster mics. And I love those mics. I've been using those mics ever since I bought them for AMC when we were doing AMC Movie Talk. But in my office here, I decided to go with I didn't need an adapter or an audio device. So I just decided to go with a USB mic. And one of the most highly rated USB mics I saw was this Shure MV7. I think it's MV7. It might be M7V, but I think it's the MV7 is the name of this microphone. It's by Shure. Shure makes some of the most popular microphones for podcasters, including the SM7B and things like that. But I decided to give this one a shot, and I really like it. I like it a lot here in my office. It's very simple, and it really, really works. All right. Next up, we've got AEW Rules, WWE Drools. Since around 1/3 of moviegoers still haven't returned to cinemas post-pandemic, and several big films have bombed this year, should studios consider doing pay-per-view streaming releases, kind of like Black Widow's day-and-day release on Disney+? No, because they've experimented with that stuff, and it always flops. It always falls flat on its face. It never turns out well. By the way, Variety did an article talking about how, like, the vast majority of people who watch TV at home have never done a pay-per-view on their televisions at home. I mean, that's actually a big chunk. So while there are some people who still haven't gone back to the movie theaters, and I'm sorry, I'm just seeing some of the dumbest discussion going on in like some people are saying the stupidest things in the live chat. So anyway, they've experimented with that. It never had good results. Through the pandemic and through all the immersion of the streaming war and everything, what we have seen all the studios realize was that the traditional theatrical release model, they realized through the pandemic, oh, that's what worked best. That's what worked best. Because during the pandemic, in the last number of years, they thought, oh, we're going to pivot to like the full stream, or we'll pivot to home entertainment, or we'll pivot to this. And as they've done that for the last couple of years, they realize, wow, we're losing so much money. This is not the way we're going to make money moving forward. Now, while there have been several high-profile films that failed at the box office, there's also been a number of big successes at the same time. But what they have learned through trial and experimentation is that model they thought was going to be the new wave of the future didn't work. And that's why you're seeing all these studios now rolling back to the older model, while still trying to figure out a way to have the older model plug into the new technologies and the new world that we have. But like day and date pay-per-views, they've just found out it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, unfortunately. All right. Next up, we go to Duck, who writes, Buenas tardes. I wanted to ask if you've seen Spider-Man 2, the video game movie yet. I have not, but I really do want to see it because I really like the first one. I finished the game, and although good, the story was quite bad. Nothing was compelling, and it feels like they tried to make the dialogue as unnatural as possible. Well, you're the first, again, all opinions on subjective stuff like this are perfectly valid. But I got to say, Duck, while I cannot comment on this myself, because I haven't played or watched the cutscene movie yet, that's the first bit of negativity I've heard towards this. Right? Almost everybody I've heard talk about this game have absolutely loved it. Yours is the first kind of critical take on the story that I've heard. Again, I haven't seen it yet, so maybe I'll feel the same way. But that's really interesting that you felt that way about it. I'll keep an eye on that. All right. Garden Variety Vagabond writes, concerning Furiosa, they are really emphasizing terms like saga, odyssey, and epic. Now I can't wait for this sequel to Oh Father, Where Art Thou? Oh, I get it. Because it's based on the Odyssey. I'm okay. Okay. That's actually quite good. Well played, Garden Variety. Well played. By the way, I would like to see another Brother Where Art Thou. Just throwing that out there. Duck Duck writes in again and says, Buenas tardes. After watching -1, I started thinking about Legendary's Godzilla. There has been a large change in tone from the first two, not Kong, to Godzilla versus Kong. They have clearly embraced the silliness going forward, especially with the new trailer. Let's see here. -1 in 2014 made me realize I prefer a ground narrative in Godzilla movies, but I'm also very glad how we have both, unless -1 chooses to also go in a goofy direction. This is best of both worlds scenario. What do you prefer? I mean, I don't know that there's an issue that I prefer one or the other. They both have their strengths, the Legendary and the Toho, but they both have their weaknesses, right? With the Toho stuff that's more traditional, it's also extremely predictable, right? And they are, Rob and I talked about this earlier today. They are very much kind of like zombie movies. It's the same formula every time, with some minor differences of where he's attacking or how the humans are going to try to exploit a weakness or what a human story angle is. For the most part, those Godzilla movies are all very much the same, right? And I say this as somebody who loved -1. I really enjoyed that film because it has its weaknesses, but it has its strengths too. And I think for a North American audience, while $11 million is great, I think the reason Godzilla -1 didn't make $110 million instead of $11 million is the fact that North American audiences love their action. And Godzilla just walking onto shore and kicking over some buildings and firing off his nuclear breath at, a static town that then blows up. That's not enough for I think a big portion of the North American audience. They want action. They want something versus something. They want a fight. They want whatever. Now, that can lead you into what we got with like Godzilla versus Kong, but that has its drawbacks too, right? Because then it gets a little bit more silly. I mean, literally King Kong. And listen, I loved Godzilla versus Kong. I have a lot of problems with it, but I had a blast with it. It was a lot of fun. But it leads you into having Godzilla or King Kong running around with Stormbreaker, right? He's got his own Stormbreaker. He's running around. It's like, where in any traditional King Kong stories does King Kong have his own magical, Norse mythology Asgardian war axe infused with the thunder power of Thor? So they both have their pros and they both have their cons. And that's why I'm glad they both exist. Which do I prefer? I don't know that I have one that I prefer over the other. Sometimes I want a great human introspective story about Japanese wartime and all that kind of stuff and understanding the allegory that Godzilla represents as a natural threat of the Toho ones. But sometimes I want a more fun, action-oriented Godzilla over here. So sometimes I feel I'm in the mood for one, sometimes in the mood for the other. And that's kind of why I kind of like that they both exist, because I can enjoy both of them. But I really do like -1. I do really like -1 a lot. All right. Next up, Suthius writes, I shake my head at all the comments about Godzilla having pink for his dorsal fins and power-up. Godzilla, indeed, has had shades of pink/purple in his past iterations. Heck, even just a few years ago, Shin was all purple, but no, he's just woke now. Oy vey. Oh yeah, again, who cares? Never. Anybody who uses the word woke is basically a moron, and I pay no attention to it. Look, by the way, I say that as somebody that the first time I watched a trailer, I was not a big fan of the color change either. All right? I just admit that right up front. I didn't. Now, once I got into the trailer once or twice and I realized, oh, Godzilla is recuperating. He's absorbing the radiation of that color crystal. It kind of makes sense that his color scheme would change. I accept it. I'm still not a big fan of it. Like, I prefer the blue they've been using in the last couple of movies, including -1. I really do kind of prefer that blue, but yeah, it makes sense. Like, if he's absorbing a different kind of crystal, he's going to have a different kind of power. And it's important in storytelling, because this is a visual medium, to make some form of differential between them with a visual difference, right? That he's absorbing a different kind of radiation now. And so the results are going to be a variation on his power. Well, then for a movie, it becomes important then have a visual representation of that change. So a color change. So they go from the blue that I prefer to something else. And to me, it wasn't the fuchsia. It was that it was any other color, right? Like if it had been red, or if it had been some kind of weird shit like brown, or if it had been a teal, or if it been like, I would have been put off by any color change. But I do get that with a power change, with something that he's doing differently, it should have a physical difference as well. And if that means a different color, it means a different color. So, well, we'll see how it plays out in the movie. All right. Let's see. Next up, where are we at? We're at Suthius, who writes, DeMarcus Williams, University. Oh, I know what this is. University of Georgia. TJ Juxon, Wayne State University. Check Marius Taka Raketrix, Michigan State University. Javaris Jamar Jarvison Lamar, University of Middle Texas. Hingle McDingleberry, Penn State University. For those of you who do not know this, this is from one of the funniest sketches that Key and Peele ever did. Yeah, there's the substitute teacher. Yeah, there's the bitch sketch. Yeah, there's the Liam Neesons. Yeah, there's a lot of them. But their college all-star game, calling out the player names at the college all-star game, is one of the funniest things they've ever done. Laquanus, Letitius, Magorius, Bacucius. And then then you get to the one guy who just squeaks like he's a dolphin. Like, University of Miami. If you haven't seen it, look it up. Key and Peele college football names. Just go look that up on YouTube. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's really funny. All right. Next up, an anonymous viewer writes, your thoughts on the Nosferatu updates so far. I haven't really been keeping track of the updates. I do know this. Robert Eggers, who directed like Witch, I loved Witch. Loved it. I loved his latest film, The Northman. I thought that movie was great and really underappreciated. I still don't know what the hell Lighthouse was. I'm oddly attracted to it, but I'm also really repulsed by it. I don't get it, whatever. Robert Eggers is a fabulous filmmaker. And this Nosferatu remake, you got Nicholas Hoult in there. You've got another Skarsgård brother in there. Willem Dafoe is in there, as he's been using Willem Dafoe a lot. I mean, look, it's a Robert Eggers film. So instantly I'm keen on it. I want to see it. I think he's a really, really interesting filmmaker. Even sometimes I just don't get what the hell it is he's talking about. And yeah. All right. Let's see. Next up, we got Attack 5. And Attack 5 writes, has there ever been a movie that didn't click to you until you saw it in theaters? When I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey in theaters, the movie's pacing, atmosphere, and story choices finally made sense. I had a similar experience with Akira and Tenet. That's a great question, Tack. I personally don't think so, for me. There haven't been a lot of films that I first saw at home and then later got to see on the big screen. A couple come to mind. Lawrence of Arabia was one, but I was deeply in love with that movie, even from watching it on television. So I didn't have that much of a different of an experience watching it on the big screen, although it was definitely a better experiencing on the big screen, but it didn't fundamentally change. Like, I didn't get the movie before, but now I get it. You know what I mean? Other than that, I can't think of a lot. And a lot of the classic movies I've never had a chance to see on the big screen. Like I don't think I've ever seen The Godfather on the big screen. Spartacus was one. I saw Spartacus on the big screen, but again, I already love that movie, so it didn't really change for me watching it on the big screen. So I can't think of one, but that's a great topic, Tack. I really like that. I'm glad you brought it up. Again, not for me. I haven't had that experience myself, but I like the fact that you brought that up. I thought that was really cool. All right. Pablo writes, this is my first time asking a question. Well, thank you for writing in, Pablo. Earlier last week, we saw Batista's picture at the DC offices. Yep, sitting in James Gunn's parking spot. Do you think he may be or could get cast as Perry White? I don't see it. I mean, X actor and X role, any actor can play any role if the director wants them to, right? So you could. Do I see Dave Batista playing a Perry White? I mean, it all depends on what James Gunn is going to have his iteration of Perry White be like. Because his iteration of Perry White may be very different from other iterations of Perry White. Zack Snyder's iteration of Perry White was very different from other iterations of Perry White. Lawrence Fishburne was a great Perry White in that. But again, you got the brain dead. Perry White, his name's Perry White, not Perry Black. God, the idiocy. Anyway. But when you think like character-wise, I have a difficult time envisioning Dave Batista playing that character. I mean, maybe that's fair or unfair, but I have a hard time picturing him playing that character. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, I don't think there's much of a chance that he's playing Perry White. By the way, we don't even know that he's going to be in Superman Legacy. They could be talking about him being in another movie down the line, not necessarily Superman Legacy. But in general, I would have a hard time imagining him playing Perry White. But hey, listen, anything's possible. All right, guys, listen, we still got a lot to get through here. But before we do, we're going to take a quick second here and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode, our friends at MasterClass and the folks that Keep My Teeth Healthy, Quip. We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of this video, MasterClass. Guys, as a small business owner, I am finding myself having to be in negotiations all the time, whether it's with new contractors, vendors, or even agencies that represent our company. Now, I don't like to go into these negotiations unarmed, so I found the perfect class on MasterClass, The Art of Negotiation by Chris Voss, a real-life former FBI lead hostage negotiator. Taking this class on MasterClass made me feel a lot more equipped and confident going into all these various negotiations I have to do on a regular basis. With MasterClass, you can learn from the best to become your best anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. An annual membership starts at just $10 a month, and you get unlimited access to every instructor, thousands of online lessons, exclusive content, insight, and much more. There are over 180 classes to pick from, everything from filmmaking with Martin Scorsese all the way to cooking with the great Gordon Ramsay. In MasterClass, you will find practical lessons that you can apply to your life and work. This holiday season, give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/Campea. Right now, you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/Campea. masterclass.com/Campea. Offer terms apply. Guys, we want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Quip. Good health starts with good habits, and Quip makes forming good dental habits easy by delivering all of the oral care essentials that you need to care for your mouth. I've already told you guys about their incredible toothbrush that is now my favorite toothbrush I've ever owned, and their mints and gum are amazing. But now I want to tell you about their water flosser. It hits all the right spots with gentle or deep cleaning pressure at the touch of a button. And don't worry about recharging. The cordless rechargeable battery lasts up to 8 weeks with daily use, no bulky charger or dock or tangled cords. It blasts away up to 99.9% of plaque and popcorn from treated areas with precision thanks to the 360-degree rotating magnetic floss tip that snaps right into place. It's easy to control water flow that leaves you feeling squeaky clean. And the sleek and slim design, it keeps your countertops as clean as your teeth. So guys, if you go to getquip.com/Campea right now, you'll get 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, and water flosser. That's 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, water flosser at getquip.com/Campea. Spelt GETQUIP.com/Campea. Quip, the good habits company. And thank you to our friends at MasterClass and Quip for sponsoring today's episode. All right, guys, let's get back over to your questions here, shall we? We're going to pick things up here with Narf, who writes, I can't wait for the moment in the Godzilla x Kong movie where Kong with his gauntlet arm says, I am inevitable, and reboots the MCU and no more multiverse crap. Wouldn't that be great? Now, listen, I am actually quite interested in that because like a lot of people, when we first saw Godzilla with the, exoskeleton arm, for lack of a better term, I was like, well, but then I heard somebody else kind of say like, you know what? I think that's basically their way of putting a cast on Godzilla. I think Godzilla somebody mentioned this, and I think it's a really good theory, that Godzilla gets injured earlier in the film fighting something else, and that is the human's way of helping him heal. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's what they're doing. I don't know that that's the case, but I kind of like the theory, and it kind of makes sense to me. So, we'll see how that turns out. All right. Next up, we got Stephen Smith, who writes, which will happen first? Jets going to the Super Bowl or the Maple Leafs getting to the Stanley Cup Finals? Both never have gone in my and yours lifetimes. I mean, I think the Leafs have a shot this year, but overall, I would say, well, I'd have to say the Leafs because I think it could theoretically happen this year. But overall, here's one of the great things about the NFL. One of the great things about the NFL, and this is the same thing that annoys a lot of people, but literally a team's culture can change from one season to the next. How many times, in good and bad ways, how many times have we seen a Super Bowl champion the next year not even make the playoffs? How many times have we seen a team that finished last in their division win the division the next year? Like, the thing about the fluidity of the NFL means that teams can turn things around, I think, much quicker than they can in most other leagues. Yeah, in baseball, hockey, basketball, we've seen last place teams do really, really great the next season. That happens. But I feel like that kind of turnaround can happen more often in like the NFL. So yeah, things are bad for the Jets right now, but all it takes is for them to find the right quarterback, which they have not done yet. And like 2 years later, you could be looking at them appearing in the Super Bowl. So I'm going to say the Leafs because I think they have a chance this year, but I think the nature of the NFL just suggests that the Jets can do it quickly. By the way, I think they've got the right coach. Salah's a good football mind. He's got a lot of crap around him, but I think they can turn things around. All right. Next up, we've got Emotional Baggage Rights. Boys Season 4, Fallout Season 1, House of the Dragon Season 2. Long live the continuation of the golden era of TV. These days, I much prefer the long form of storytelling of TV rather than movies. It's more character-driven and lets us experience the ups and downs in a person's life. I mean, I will always prefer the story format of movies because here's the big drawback of television. The big drawback of television, and I say this is somebody who watches a lot of TV and who enjoys his shows and likes that. But the thing is, why it always takes a more skillful storyteller to make a good movie is because a storyteller trying to make a great movie has to introduce you to the world you're in, the characters inhabiting and making up that world, the central conflicts at what's at play at the heart of the story, the then playing out of that conflict and then bringing it all to a satisfying conclusion all within 2 hours. Sometimes an hour and 45 minutes, sometimes 2.5 hours, but roughly speaking, all within 2 hours. It is a Herculean, unbelievably challenging, difficult, and amazing feat. Whereas with television shows, you don't have such restraints, right? But the problem that comes along with that is the price tag of, say, more fleshed out character arcs, the price tag of more nuanced side quests and B storylines, which are a rich part of a good television series. The price tag of that is that, unlike a movie, which I can sit down, get the introduction, the body, and the conclusion all in one sitting in 2 hours, you have to commit 8, 10, 12, 16, depending on if the storyline stretches. Like if you want to sit down and watch The Wire, before it starts getting really good, you got to watch 30, 40 episodes. I mean, the price tag that comes along with getting it from a television show is amazingly higher. It's a much higher price tag. Time and money are the two currencies that you deal in, right? And the price tag as far as time commitment is immensely huge. So I enjoy a great show. Of course, you guys know how much I love Last of Us, House of the Dragon. I can't wait for Shogun, all this kind of stuff. But I will always prefer the storytelling medium of a movie because it takes a lot more skill and it's got a much lower price tag for how much of my time is required to get the full story. But again, there's no right or wrong answer. Like both have their pros and cons. It just all depends what you as an individual, do you value more the pros that come with this one? Or do you value more the pros that come with that one? Are you more adverse to the cons that come with this one? Or are you personally more adverse to the cons that comes with that one? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just that, for me, I will always prefer and have a higher respect for the people who can pull off making great movies. So yeah, that's just how I see it. But I think you're not alone, emotional baggage. I think a lot of people also feel the same way you do about that. And that's one of the great things about entertainment is we all have this wide diversity of stuff out there that we can all enjoy. All right. Next up, BK Dan writes, John, did you see the CBR that Warner Brothers is pulling content off PlayStation Store and it will not be available even if you've purchased some 1,300 seasons of shows and movies? Yeah, we talked about that on the John Campea Show earlier today. So we did. I won't go all into it again here. I'll just clarify something. Warner Brothers did not just pull it off. It's the fact that PlayStation, Sony, and Discovery were not able to renew their licensing agreement. And as a result of them not being able to come to a conclusion on their new licensing agreement, the content comes off. It's not that Sony or Discovery just went, we don't want people to have Discovery content anymore. Let's just pull it off. It's more nuanced. It's more complicated than that. It's still a sucky situation. I go into all the reasons why it's completely sucky. But the best thing to do is to go and watch the much longer video that we did on that as a segment on the John Campea Show earlier today. All right, guys, with that down, let's go on over and start taking the live questions you guys have sent in. I've seen some people asking, we've already turned off the super chats. So the super chats are turned off. So we're just going to get to the questions that have already been sent in. And we're going to start things off here with Calvin Servo Peno, who writes, Hey, John, I may be reading way too much from this, but every single post from the Sandman accounts always says next set of stories and renewed for more episodes. Can we end up getting 1 or 2 episodes every few months and not a season? Thanks. No. I don't think that's the way they're looking at it. Even if you look at Sandman season 1, there are multiple stories in season 1, right? So when they say, the next set of stories, I think they're just talking about the next season, maybe even the next several seasons. Now, I might be wrong about that, but the way they describe that, saying more episodes are coming, that just means a new season, right? Like when I'm on a streaming service and sometimes there's a new season up, it'll say new episodes rather than new season. I don't know if some of you have noticed that too, but I've noticed it says new episodes. So I wouldn't read too much into that. I think it's saying new set of stories. The first season had a set of stories. This is going to have a new set of stories, new episodes. That just means a new season. So I don't think it means anything more than that. I think we're going to get the season. I mean, maybe they release them one episode a week, but I think it's just going to be a regular season of Netflix television. I mean, I may be wrong. We'll find out, but I don't interpret anything more than that, Calvin, to be honest with you. Let's see how it turns out. All right. There are those who call me Tim writes, This week, I binge watched Arcane for the first time. God, I love that show. And wow, what a show. Might be my favorite animated show. Season 2 can't come soon enough. Listen, this is one of those awesome examples of a show that I didn't think looked all that interesting, that I didn't have a lot of interest in. And then when I tried it out, I fell in love with it. Arcane is my all-time favorite animated show. Now, that's a little premature, I admit to say, because it's only been one season so far. Maybe season 2 will suck and it won't be my favorite animated show of all time anymore. Maybe. But for now, it is the most incredible accomplishment I've seen in an animated show. And I'm not saying it's the best animation. I'm saying it is the best marriage between the animated medium and the story in which they tell and the characters they give us. It's just a phenomenal. If you guys have not tried Arcane yet, doesn't matter if you know anything about, I can't even remember. What's the name of the video game? It's not, is it League of Legends? Help me out. I can't remember which video game that Arcane is based on. I want to say League of Legends, but maybe it is. If anybody in the live chat knows the answer to that. No? Nobody knows? Okay. So, I think it's based on League of Legends, but either way, it's just, oh God, the show is so good. It's so great. I'm so glad that you found it and you started checking it out. All right. Let's see here. And by the way, some people are saying, yes, yeah, it is based. Okay. It's League of Legends, right? I don't know anything about League of Legends. I've never played it. And this show is the best animated show of all time. So believe me, you don't need to know anything about the game to check it out. All right. Next up. We got Cuss Cinema, who writes, Godzilla's -1 is a masterpiece. It's my favorite movie of the year, and I dare say it deserves a Best Picture consideration. I'm going to disagree. I had a wonderful time watching the movie. I think it's the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. And it's really a wonderful experience. I don't think I'm going to have it it might end up in my top 10. Maybe it ends up in my top 10. And there are 10 nominees for Best Picture. I don't know. I wonder if it would be one that Japan would put forward as their contender for Best Foreign Language Film. That could definitely be something. But now that I think about it, because my instant reaction to cinema is to say, no, listen, it's a very good movie, fun movie for what it is. But it's still just Godzilla walks onto the thing and blows up a bunch of buildings, turns around and walks out. I really like the human story. I love the movie. And my instant thought was to say, no, not a Best Picture contender. But now that I think about it, I could conceivably see it being in my top 10 favorite of the year. And there are 10 nominees for Best Picture. You know what? Maybe it's not as crazy as I first thought. Maybe. I mean, listen, there's been some exceptional cinema this year. Like whether you're talking about Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, why am I freezing on? Air. Air is remarkable. My favorite movie of the year is still Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That is still my number one favorite film of the year. There's a lot of great movies. May, December just dropped on Netflix. That's going to get a lot of awards consideration. Of course, we still have Color Purple is still coming out. I mean, there's a lot up there, but maybe it could be in my top 10. Of course, yeah, Barbie, the biggest box office film of the year. Barbie is going to get some awards consideration. It's possible. You know what? It's possible. Maybe. Just maybe. It's not going to be in Godzilla won't be in my top 5, but it could very well end up in my top 10. Anyway, I'm glad you brought that up, Casinema. All right, CR writes, why is it that even though I'm watching one of my favorite TV shows or movies in a hotel room, there's a weird morning soap opera effect? Can it be fixed? That is because of the frame. Basically, in pure layman's terms, it's the frame rate of the television. And it is a problem. Like Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise. I don't know if you guys remember this. Let me know if you remember this in live chat. A couple of years ago, Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise talked about the motion smoothing effect, right? That a lot of televisions have. And unfortunately, most new TVs have their version of this frame rate, this motion smoothing, whatever they call it. Every manufacturer has a different kind of name for it. But Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie made this like PSA and put it out publicly saying, folks, the first thing you need to do when you get your new TV is go in and find out, number one, what your manufacturer calls the motion smoothing effect, and go in and turn it off, because that's not how our movies were made to be seen. But with hotel TVs, I don't think you have access to those. I could be wrong, but I don't think you have access to those setting options with their televisions. I don't think on those TVs you have the settings option. I could be wrong about that, but you might just have to deal with it the way it is there in the hotel room. I'm not really sure. All right. Good question though, CR. Next up, Ohas Gadri writes, any of you hype for GTA 6 tomorrow? Actually, you know what? People in the live chat have been mentioning since we started today's show that I've been seeing in the live chat that the trailer dropped early. I haven't seen it because I haven't heard word of that since we started the show, but it's only been since we started the show that, Robert is saying that they didn't drop it early. It leaked. Oh, that's unfortunate. But wait, Michael Gonzalez, well, maybe it leaked and then Rockstar just said, you know what, if it's already out there, let's just put the full beautiful version of it out. Either way, it's out there. Indiana Jake saying, yeah, Rockstar has now officially released it. Okay, that was probably as a result of a good thing. So I have not seen it yet. I'm sure we're going to talk about it tomorrow on the show, but I hadn't even heard that it leaked or dropped until after we started today's stream, so I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So we'll definitely talk about it on tomorrow's show. All right. Next up, we got Raymond Verrata, who writes, a Spider-Man noir series at Amazon? Thoughts? Are you asking that in theory, or was there some sort of an announcement about it? Like, did somebody announce a Spider-Man noir series at Amazon? Anybody in the live chat hear anything about that? I have not. If you're asking, okay, so here's the thing, Raymond. If you're asking in theory, and people are saying, yeah, they're moving forward with it. Did this news just come out like in the last 2 hours? Everybody in the live chat is saying, yeah, they're doing it. That Spider-Man Noir series in Variety. That must have just come out in the last couple of hours because I did not see that. Because I was about to say, I'm going to be fully honest with you. I was about to say, I don't know, Raymond. I don't know that I can see them doing that. But if they are, look, if they can get Nicolas Cage back to voice Spider-Man Noir, I thought the whole premise was really cool. I'd be down for checking it out as a series. Why not? Yeah, I'd totally give it a shot. I really love that character. All right. Next up. Raymond Verrata says also at Amazon, Silk Spider Society from Sony. That one they've talked about before. That one has been on the radar for a while. I remember us talking about it maybe a couple of months ago that they were going to do that. So that one makes more sense to me. All right. Next up, we got Do Good. I like that username. That's a great username. Do Good writes, how much of the flack Disney's gotten lately has been earned over their IPs, MCU, Pixar, Star Wars remakes? With that and more, is Chapek the worst CEO they've ever had? I have no idea what you're talking about. Been earned over their IPs, MCU, Pixar, Star Wars remakes. What? I gotta say, I'm not quite sure what it is what remakes? I don't know. I'm sorry, Do Good. I love your username, but I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking. By the way, back to Variety is saying that the Noir series is actually going to be live action, not animated. Okay, now I got to go read this article. I got to see what's going on here because that is really interesting. I'm going to have to go read that article when we're done here. All right, guys. We still have a few more questions to get to, but before we do, we're going to take another quick moment and thank another sponsor of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. Signing your life away to a big wireless provider is kind of like being trapped on a roller coaster from hell. Sure, it looks like fun at first. They probably even threw in a free phone, but now you can't get off. Month after month of insane bills and unexpected thrills, like overages and surprise fees. If that sounds like your current big wireless plan, it's time to get off the ride with Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You guys know before I came to Mint Mobile, I was paying triple what I am paying now on the standard big wireless plan, and I will never go back. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped right to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends Ryan Reynolds and Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show. All right, guys. With that down, let's get into the remainder of your questions here, shall we? We're going to get things picked up here with Shay, who writes, super not happy about Florence Pugh getting pegged in the face like that in Brazil. Soon fan experiences are going to get ruined for all of us. This got brought up on the main show earlier today. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Like I said, I think whatever moron thought it was cool to throw something at somebody else up on a stage who's completely vulnerable. First of all, you're a dickless coward. You're an absolute dickless coward. I hope that other people in the arena saw who they were, pinned them down on the ground, pulled their legs open, and have 500 people take turns stomping on their balls. Really, that kind of a dickless coward doesn't deserve to have functioning balls anyway. And you're right. It's fucking idiots like that ruin things for everybody. It ruins things for everybody. You think Florence Pugh is going to go do another comic convention anytime soon? I wouldn't if I were her. I wouldn't. And there's going to be now other celebrities that go, why would I go up completely vulnerable up on a stage when any idiot can throw something at me just for being on stage there? Like, what are they going to have to do? Are they going to have to do what they do in like country bars where they have to put up a steel fence around people sitting on a stage now because of fucking idiots like this? Guys, do me a favor. Don't just stand around. If you're in one of these crowds, you see somebody about to throw something on the stage, punch them in the fucking face. Like, do something to stop them from doing what they're about to do. It's just, God, like, just the idiocy is like, and you're also endangering somebody. You're endangering somebody. Like, any one of 100 things can happen when you throw something at somebody else, especially when they have no idea it's coming. They're completely vulnerable. They're on a stage. Bright lights are in their face. They don't see what's coming at them from the audience. You can seriously fucking hurt somebody. And if you're so stupid that you don't know that, maybe you don't deserve to breathe. I don't know. It's just, it's so pisses me off because there are going to be either it's her or other celebrities that are now going to go, you know what? It's not worth the risk to me to go and sit on that stage where I'm completely blinded because I got all the spotlights in me and any one of these fucking peons out here can just throw something and hit me in the face. That means peons like me, when I want to go to these things, we're running the risk now of not having these people being willing to do this, and I wouldn't blame them whatsoever. Fucking cowards. Oh, I'm so tough. I'm going to throw something at somebody on a stage who can't see it coming. You're a fucking coward. And I hope that person got the shit beat out of them. I really do. Anyway, and I'm not one for violence. You know me. I'm fucking pacifist. I'm not one for violence. Man, I really hope that guy got the shit beat out of him, whoever it is. All right. Next up, Raymond Verrata writes, among Kennedy Center awardees, Dionne Warwick, That's what friends are for. Queen Latifah, Barry Gibb, and Billy Crystal. Crystal says he misses Robin Williams. I'm sure he does. Billy Crystal's a treasure. He really is. His history and his stuff of doing, like, oh God, it's so good. So good. I thought he was I love him so much, and I'm glad he got that recognition. I really do. All right. Bobby Jackson writes, have you heard any new updates on the Battle of the Planets live action movie the Russos are doing? I don't think it's happening. I really don't think it's happening. Now, I would love to. For those of you who don't know, Battle of the Planets, also known as G-Force, or in Japan, I believe it was called Gatchaman. I remember me and my friends in my neighborhood when I was a kid, we used to play G-Force. We would take bed sheets, tie little capes on, and we'd run around the neighborhood, and we'd each be one of the characters. And I still know all their names: Mark, Jason, Tiny, Keop, and Princess. And their ship, the Phoenix, that had one main weapon, which was a missile launcher that they had one big red button for that they would hit to fire the missiles. It was awesome. I grew up watching it. I loved it. And I remember when their first reports coming out that, the Russo brothers production company, I forget the name of their production company now, but anyway, the Russo brothers production companies were talking about maybe making a live action version of it, but I have heard nothing about it since. And I think it's dead. I don't think it's actually happening, but yeah. Oh yeah. Bobby Jackson's right. Agbo. That's the name of the Russo brothers production company. So yeah. And no, Robert, they were way better than the Power Rangers. G-Force was way better than the Power Rangers. Power Rangers suits looked better. I'll give them that, but G-Force way better than the Power Rangers. Fight me. All right. Next up, we got Bobby Jackson also writes, about FSU, even though their quarterback is out, their D has been top-notch and would have been good to see put to the test. A great defense can win games too. Listen, nobody's saying, Bobby, that would they have a chance to win? Well, yeah, of course. Every team has a chance any given Sunday, right? Any given Sunday. But Georgia also would have a chance against any of the top 4 teams, but they're on the outside looking in. Who was it that just lost to Washington? Yeah, Oregon. Oregon just lost to Washington, but they're really good and they would have a chance to win. They could win a game against any of the 4 teams that got in. It's possible. But the thing about the committee is that it's not about who has a chance to win. It's who are the 4 best, who are the more likely to win. And the thing, Bobby, is that you're not going to find, and I think you'll agree, you're not going to find a single sports book in the entire country that would say, if FSU played Alabama next week, there's not a single sports book in this country that would say FSU would be a favorite. None of them would. Nobody would. And I see people like Stephen A. Smith going, "Oh, this is a travesty." But if I was talking to Stephen A. Smith, I would put this challenge to him. If you had $1 million, if you had to take $1 million of your own money, Stephen A. Smith, if you had to take $1 million of your own money and you had to bet it on a game between Alabama and FSU next week, who are you going to put that $1 million on? As much as Stephen A. Smith screamed and cried, and by the way, I'm a fan of Stephen A. Smith. I find him ridiculous, but I love watching him. But as much as he screamed and cried about how FSU got robbed, if he had to put $1 million of his own money, if Alabama played Florida State University next week, I guarantee you he's putting it on Alabama, because everybody knows Alabama would be the favorite. Everybody knows that most likely Alabama would curb stomp Florida State University. Hell, there's a lot of people who think Alabama is going to beat number 1 Michigan next when they play on January. So I get it. Yeah, maybe they could pull out a win. It's possible, sure. But that's not who gets the final 4 spots. It doesn't go to who could maybe win a game. It's who are the 4 best teams. And right now, everybody agrees Alabama is a better team than FSU. They would curb stomp them. And that's, to me, that's the end of the discussion. That's just the end of it right there. Is that team favored over that team? Yeah. Well, then that's the team that should be in the Final Four. That's the way it's always been. It's always been that way. They declare the champion or who's in the Final Four as who they think are the 4 best teams. And right now, just about everybody in the country thinks Alabama is a better team than FSU. So there's not really any other way around it, my friend, right? And I'm not even a big fan of college football. I mean, I watch the games, but I'm not a huge fan of college football. And even I know that, come on, man. I even watched one show where they were talking about that Alabama in a theoretical game against FSU next week would be a 14.5 point favorite. 14.5 point favorite. Come on. There's no argument to be made about FSU getting that spot over Alabama. There's just not. All right. And all apologies to our friends who are FSU fans. 100%. I get it. You won. You had a perfect season. You were 13-0. You won your championship, and you don't get a spot in the Final Four. It sucks, but that's the system. Next year, there are 12 teams in the playoff instead of 4. It'll be a different story next year. All right. Isaac Martinez writes, hey, John, is The Boy and the Heron have a chance to win Best Animated Film against Across the Spider-Verse? 100% it does. Actually, the first awards show of the season, the New York Film Critics Circle, just did their awards ceremony. We talked about it on Friday, and they actually gave Best Animated Film of the Year to The Boy and the Heron. So I still think Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse will win. I haven't seen The Boy and the Heron yet. I'm going to go see that later this week. Ann and I got plans to go see it. But there is a chance it could be this other one. So yes, it has a chance. 100% it has a chance. All right. Next up, we got Robert Presser who writes, I tear up in -1 with the PTSD scene. The use of survivor's guilt is amazing. Easily the best Godzilla movie besides Shin, Year of Gojira. I think this isn't a totally popular thing to say, but I think this is better than Shin in almost every way. Shin is really good, but this is the human story is just better. Godzilla's meaner. It visually looks better. I mean, I think there's an argument to be had between Shin and -1. Yeah, there's an argument to be had. But for me personally, I just think in almost every checkbox, I think -1's the better film. But that's just me. I appreciate all the things you mentioned in it too, man. I really did. All right. AV Cali writes, I saw Godzilla with my friend, cried 2 times, love the dynamic with the human element as well. And wow, that atomic breath, goosebumps with the music. Yeah. Now listen, as with a lot of Godzilla movies, a number of things are really over exaggerated in the performances, but that's part of the genre, if you will. But I tell you what, I love the whole running theme of the war's not over for me. There's something very powerful about that. And when you can make a Godzilla movie and the best, and Godzilla's great in it, but the best parts is the human story. You put a great human story with a Godzilla movie, you got something really special. And I think that's what -1 did. All right. Let's see here. Albert Luna writes, sorry guys, my voice is getting really raw. I did a 2-hour show today and now we're a little over an hour into today. So my voice is struggling here. Our Albert Luna writes, there's a Godzilla movie on YouTube for free called Shin Godzilla. Oh, I know Shin, but I didn't know it was on YouTube. I did not know that one was on YouTube. Thanks for, now everybody knows where you can go watch it. I had no idea it was on there. Thanks for letting me know that, Albert. All right. And is this the last one? No, we still got 2 more. Ryan Abney writes, hey, John, big fan of the show. Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate that, man. I recently saw fan art of Henry Cavill as Batman. I have to say he would be perfect casting in James Gunn's DCU. Please check out the fan art if you can. Have a great day. Here's the thing though, Ryan. Fan art does not influence me one way or the other about whether somebody would be good casting. We have no idea if Henry Cavill would make a good Batman or not, because we have no idea what kind of Batman James Gunn's DCU is going to give us without knowing. Because listen, we've had a lot of different kinds of Batmans. Val Kilmer's Batman was pretty different from Michael Keaton's Batman. Michael Keaton's Batman was totally different from Christian Bale's Batman. Christian Bale's Batman was way different than Ben Affleck's Batman. So we have no idea what kind of a Batman, and their Batman are way different than Robert Pattinson's Batman, right? You can't say this guy would be perfect for this role when we don't even know what that role is really going to be. Is James Gunn, the new DC's Batman, going to be more like Robert Pattinson's Batman? Is it going to be more like Michael Keaton's Batman? Is it going to be more like Adam West's Batman? Could it be another one that's totally different from all the other ones? We just don't know. And since we don't know, we can't say that Henry Cavill would be a good choice for it, right? Look, I've got a bro crush on Henry Cavill. You can just see his head above the TV right there. I got Henry Cavill in here looking over and protecting my office. I'm a big fan of Henry Cavill, so of course I'd be thrilled to hear Henry Cavill, but fan art is not going, ooh, that looks great. Therefore, that's what the movie should be. I've never felt that way. By the way, speaking of fan art, I'm going to tell you guys something. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to tell you, but I'm going to tell you a little something. Little secret. Keep it quiet. Shh. And this won't mean a lot to some people, but to me, I am very, very excited. I am very excited. Okay, you ready for this? You guys know that we have a show on my channel produced by Martika Ibarra and the legendary Marilyn Vance that Rob often hosts, not all the time, but he often hosts, called Designing Hollywood, right? Well, I'm going to be conducting the interview for an upcoming Designing Hollywood. And we have a true treasure of the fan community, a true treasure of the fan community that we have coming up on an episode of Designing Hollywood, whose artwork, whenever he drops a new image, makes fan communities buzz. I'm thinking some of you are starting to be able to guess who it is I'm talking about. But we have Boss Logic. And I'm not even 100% sure I'm supposed to be allowed to tell you guys this. But in December, we have Boss Logic that is going to come on Designing Hollywood. I'm going to be doing this interview myself because I have been a huge fan. I've been saying for years that Boss Logic is a fan community treasure. He is an absolute treasure. Wookie Fodder. I love that. Said Boss Logic. Is that the guy from Phantom Menace? I love that. That's great. But we got Boss Logic coming on Designing Hollywood, and I'm very, very excited about that. So just keep that, just in case I wasn't supposed to tell you, keep that quiet for now. And then, we'll see what happens as we get closer to the date. All right. That down, let's go to the final question today. It comes to us from Dildar the Glorious, who writes, I'm still in awe with the quality of Godzilla -1 with 15 million. If Japan can do this with their budgets, why can't Hollywood do that? Well, I mean, listen, to be fair, let's not pretend like the CG in Godzilla -1 is the greatest CG we've ever seen. Also, Hollywood has at times also shown that they can pull off ridiculously big budget looking films on a ridiculously small budget. Like Blumhouse's The Invisible Man was fantastic, and it felt like an $80 million film. They made that film, if I remember correctly, for $8 million. Go back to District 9. District 9 was made, was a visual effects, CGI, super heavy film, and it was made for basic pocket change. It does. Now, again, in -1, you can often see that this is not a big budget film, right? It it's made and scoped to feel like a big budget film, and they do a great job. But there are many times watching that film where we are very aware that this is not a big budget film. But it's part of the same thing, Dildar, that I've complained about for years. There's just not an excuse. Every once in a while, a big budget movie comes out where you and I both feel like we see every dollar on the screen. But those are rare and the exception. Most of the time, I feel like a $180 million movie could have easily been made for 110, or a $200 million movie could have easily been made for 150 or less. And every once in a while, when An Invisible Man, when a Five Nights at Freddy's, when a District 9, when a -1 comes out, that I think we are forced to look at Hollywood as a whole and say, tell us again why spending is so out of control. Like, why is a movie that really should be able to be made for $80 million saying it has a price tag of $165 million? Like, it really is. It has been a problem I've been talking about since the movie blog days. I remember at the movie blog, I wrote articles on the movie blog about how Hollywood is simply spending too much money. They're spending money that doesn't need to be spent. And it is pretty crazy that's the case. And they got to figure out a way to reel it in and get it under control. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this afternoon as we just casually hang out here and talk about movies and movie news and TV and streaming and all that stuff, and a little bit of Alabama versus FSU. Granted, I like talking about that stuff as well. So thanks for being here, guys. Again, tomorrow's show, let me pull this up. We've already got a number of things that we're talking about on tomorrow's show, including, and more stories will come up, I'm sure. Obviously, this GTA 6 trailer, everything. We've also got, what else are we talking about here? New images, official images coming out of Deadpool 3 now. The actually Rotten Tomatoes review embargo has been lifted on the new Wonka film. We got a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about tomorrow. And more stories are going to come out between now and tomorrow's show. Make sure you come back and join us. So that'll do it for me for today, guys. My name's John Campea. Thanks so much for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.